The Hong Kong protests explained anti-government protests have rocked Hong Kong for months and the situation shows no sign of dying down. The extradition bill which triggered the first protest was introduced in April. It would have allowed for criminal suspects to be extradited to mainland China under certain circumstances. Opponents said this risked exposing Hong Kongers to unfair trials and violent treatment. They also argued the bill would give China greater influence over Hong Kong and could be used to target activists and journalists. Hundreds of thousands of people took to the streets. After weeks of protests, leader Carrie Lam eventually said the bill would be suspended indefinitely. How did the protests escalate? Protesters feared the bill could be revived, so demonstrations continued, calling for it to be withdrawn completely. By then, clashes between police and protesters had become more frequent and violent. In July, protesters stormed Parliament, defacing parts of it. In August, one protester was injured in the eye, leading to demonstrators wearing red-colored eye patches to show their solidarity. Protest action at Hong Kong International Airport in August also saw renewed clashes and led to hundreds of flights being cancelled. In September, the bill was finally withdrawn, but protesters said this was in quite too little, too late in quite. Demonstrations continued, marked by an increasing level of violence. On 1 October, while China was celebrating 70 years of Communist Party rule, Hong Kong experienced one of its most violent and chaotic days in quite. An 18-year-old was shot in the chest with a live bullet as protesters fought officers with poles, petrol bombs and other projectiles. The government in response banned protesters wearing face masks, a ban that many activists continue to defy. In early November, a pro-Beijing lawmaker was stabbed in the street by a man pretending to be a supporter. 1 week later, a policeman shot one protester at close range when activists were trying to set up a roadblock, and later that day another man was set on fire by anti-government protesters. Both had to be treated in hospital. What did the protesters want? Some protesters have adopted the motto, and 5 demands, not one less, and these are for the protests not to be characterized as a riot and amnesty for arrested protesters, an independent inquiry into alleged police brutality, implementation of complete universal suffrage. The fifth demand, the withdrawal of the bill, has already been met. Some also want the resignation of Carrie Lam, whom they view as Beijing's puppet. Protests supporting the Hong Kong movement have spread across the globe, with rallies taking place in the UK, France, US, Canada and Australia. In many cases, people supporting the demonstrators were confronted by pro-Beijing rallies. Chinese President Xi Jinping has warned against separatism, saying any attempt to divide China would end in bodies smashed and bones ground to powder and Thanks for watching. Please subscribe Hidden News and click on the bell icon.